Bling, Cassette 3.
Chapter 11. How We Do. By the time they'd strolled to a little cafe called Tartine on West 4th Street and ordered lunch, Mimi had gleaned a wealth of personal information about Lena Whitaker. She was a recent high school graduate who was taking a year off to explore her options. Mimi wondered what her definition of recent was, since Lena also said she just turned 21. "You missed my party. It was the shit." Her father worked mostly in Los Angeles, but Lena did not go into what kind of work he did. She lived uptown in her family's apartment with no adult supervision except for her family's longtime housekeeper. Her older sister, Alexandra, got on her nerves. "She's getting her MBA from the Wharton School of Business, la-di-fucking-da." She had a boyfriend, a rapper named Crazy G, whom she had met in Miami. She was a hip-hop fanatic. "Bitch, you gonna eat all that?" Lena shrieked when the waitress put a gargantuan grilled chicken and portobello mushroom sandwich with a mountainous side of fries in front of Mimi. A woman sitting alone at a nearby table in the tiny bistro glanced over, obviously wondering why this pretty young girl was being called out as a bitch. Mimi winced slightly, but Lena just scooped up a handful of fries and prattled on. People didn't talk that way in Toledo, at least not the people Mimi knew. But she'd noticed a lot of people here did. When Imani had run into a friend as they were leaving Republic, a noodle shop on Union Square, the friend asked if she had found a man yet. She'd replied, "Bitch, please." Allie C. had ended a cell phone conversation with a female rapper she represented by saying, "Bitch, don't get me started." Lamont and his male cronies had a longer list of terms from which to choose when addressing one another. Motherfucker, money, pimp, playboy, playa. Mostly they just fell back on the timeless nigga. Mimi realized that when Lena said bitch, she was using it as a synonym for girlfriend. It was all about context. But she wasn't yet used to being on the receiving end of such language, hence her involuntary wince. "So, how do you know Lamont exactly?" Mimi asked. Lena was almost young enough to be his daughter. Were they close friends? "I've been knowing Lamont," Lena answered with a self-satisfied smile. Truth was, Lamont had taken a 17-year-old party-hopping Lena into his crew as a mascot of sorts because he was hoping to get close to Marlon Whitaker, one of the most respected men in the entertainment industry. She'd managed to maintain her position by keeping Lamont entertained with her wild antics. "I get invited to all the parties." Lena shoveled a forkload of goat cheese salad into her mouth. "Only A-list, nah I mean? I know everybody." "You know who I think is super fine?" Mimi said, hoping Lena knew this person. "That model, Omar LaRue. He was in those Tommy Hilfiger ads, you know." Lena put up a go-no-further hand and exposed a mouthful of half-eaten salad as she said, "I don't just know him. I had him." "Had him?" "I was fucking around with him for a hot minute." "No!" Mimi choked. Lena nodded, stabbing at her salad. "Yes." "I think he's so hot." "So did I," Lena said blandly. "What happened?" "He kept trying to do me raw." Mimi looked puzzled, and Lena thought, this girl needs to get a translation book if she's going to be rolling with the TLE squad. "Raw, without a condom," she elucidated. "And then I found out he gave his ex herpes." "No!" Mimi gasped. "Mm-hmm," Lena said with a disgusted curl of the lip. "So I asked him about it, know what I mean? And this nigga has the nerve to come out with, 'I ain't had an outbreak in 2 months. You believe that?" "Unbelievable," Mimi snorted. "So I told him, look, player, I don't care if the shit is active or inactive. This is information I need to know." She sucked her teeth. "Niggas ain't shit. I'm so glad I never let him touch me without a rubber." "So that was it?" Mimi asked, wondering just how many people Lena had had. Yeah, I kicked his ass to the curb with a quickness. He had a little dick anyway. A little diseased dick, Mimi added, gleefully taking part in the man-bashing. Who would have thought Omar LaRue could look that good and be that nasty? Kind of like Jamal. Men were such pigs. I saw him on a huge billboard yesterday on Houston Street, Mimi said, pronouncing the street's name as one would the city. Where? Houston Street. Houston, Lena corrected. Houston. Yeah, I saw it. She leaned toward Mimi and cracked, and I know for a fact those briefs are stuffed. Nah, I know exactly what you mean, Mimi concurred, finally figuring out the standard English translation of nah mean. The waitress came over for dessert orders, and Lena automatically said, Nothing for me. Mimi pointed out a tasty-looking apple tart in the bakery-style display case, and then, without prodding, Lena said, Well, okay, one for me, too. I really like your hair, Mimi said, admiring Lena's short Halle Berry-style pixie. Lena touched it unsurely. Really? I just had it cut. For the first week, I kept thinking it was up in a ponytail. Then I would put my hand up there and realize I'm damn near bald. She dove into the tart as soon as the waitress put it down. It looks really good on you, Mimi reassured her. Thanks, and speaking of hair, we have to do something about yours. Lena pulled a Palm Pilot out of her Louis bag. I spoke to Rod at James Scott. Who? Mimi interjected, slightly disoriented by all the unfamiliar names coming at her. Rod, James, Scott? Who? Lena looked up. My hairstylist, Rod Horton, at the James Scott Salon. He usually doesn't have immediate openings, she said, but I told him you were a close friend. Lena smiled at her own pull. Mimi was getting more confused. This was the first time they'd met. Lena hadn't even known what her hair looked like until today. Lamont told me to handle the hair situation, Lena said in response to Mimi's befuddled look. She was thrilled when Lamont told her to befriend Mimi, get her acquainted with the hip-hop scene, and do something about her hair. Now Lena actually had things to put on her to-do list. Oh, Mimi murmured. Lamont hadn't said anything to her about the hair situation. He said your hair was too... Lena made quotation marks in the air. Neo-soul. She paused, then regretfully added, I see what he means, boo. She tilted her head to get a look at Mimi's bushy ponytail. Can you even run a comb through that shit? Only when it's wet with a lot of conditioner. Yeah, you need a relaxer or at least a good flat iron, Lena said. Rob will decide. He'll be back from Disney World in a few days. He went to Disney World with his kids? He has a few boys, Lena cracked, but they ain't kids. He went down for Gay Day. Gay Day? Yeah, Lena said. You know how they like to party. Right, Mimi said vaguely. Getting her hair relaxed sounded good. She never wore her hair loose because she looked like Shaka Khan. Are you going to come with me? Sure will. Lena put away her palm. What day are you going shopping with Vanessa? Shopping? Mimi said, lost again. Who's Vanessa? Boo-boo! Lena screamed as if all this information were front-page news known by everyone. Lamont's sister-in-law. She's taking you shopping. She is? No one from the label schedule with you? No. Well, Vanessa could go all day. I can't keep up with her. So I might sit that out. Are you friends with Daryl? Wouldn't say friends, Lena answered sourly. I don't think he likes me, Mimi said, hoping Lena could tell her what his deal was. Don't take it personally, Lena said breezily, having an internal debate about whether she should order another tart. She joined the Crunch Gym 3 blocks from her apartment because she wanted to firm up, but she'd never been able to motivate and get over there. Does he call you Shorty? I don't remember. He will, Lena said. A lot of guys say that. What up, Shorty? You know. Whatever. If anything, it's a compliment. Like, what up, cutie, or something. But pay attention the next time Daryl says that to you. He says it with such venom. Like it's a put down or something. I guess because everyone has been saying that to him all his life. He has a severe short man complex. But I try so hard to be nice to him. He's going to be producing my album. How should I deal with him? Lena had already decided she and Mimi were going to be best friends, but with this question, Mimi scored many bonus points. Mimi was the new hot girl on TLE, the girl that Lamont was banking on, and Miss Thang was deferring to her. As Mimi stared at her wide-eyed, Lena gave the question considerable thought. She felt like the all-knowing Wizard of Oz to Mimi's guileless Dorothy. In the distance, she heard a dog barking. Toto? There's no doubt in my mind that he hates you, Lena said bluntly, which made Mimi's hopeful expression sag. Lena put her hand across the table and softened the blow with, because you're very pretty. That tepid compliment was all she was getting. Lamont is high on you, and most upsetting for Lil Country D, you can look down on him. Literally. Mimi nodded at Lena's sage assessment. Don't feel bad, Lena said. He doesn't like me, Vanessa, Imani, or any of the women in the inner sanctum. The inner sanctum? Lamont's people, Lena said impatiently. Did this girl need to have everything broken down to the letter? With a hushed reverence, Mimi asked, Are all the women in the inner sanctum beautiful? You have to be, Lena said smugly, proud to be a member and pissed that she was probably considered the least beautiful of the bunch. But, getting back to the problem on the table, she announced dramatically, Daryl is probably in his filthy little Brooklyn studio apartment putting a hex on you right now. What am I going to do? Mimi cried, as though Lena were a tarot reader who just turned over the death card. Lena pressed the tips of her fingers together. Her nails were painted white with chipping multicolored palm trees, a remnant of her Miami trip. He is a hot producer, Lena very reluctantly admitted. He is? Yeah, that song he did for Dickie is retarded. Mimi took it from the smile on Lena's face that retarded meant good. And on the low, he writes most of Dickie's material, Lena said, snapping for the waitress to bring her a second tart. There's your bright side. He'll probably give you some great songs. Just kill him with kindness, Lena said, deciding that was the way to go. I suspect all that boy needs is a little love. The waitress came over with bill in hand, so Lena bailed on tart number 2, which she knew she was dead wrong even to think about. Mimi immediately grabbed the bill, saying, My treat. Lena hadn't even reached for her wallet. Thanks, Lena said, scratching at a palm tree on her nail. I'll get you next time. Things get kind of tight for me toward the end of the month, know what I mean? No, not really, Mimi said, putting down 3 20s. She barely had enough cash. That was a lot for 2 sandwiches and some tiny pastries. My money doesn't come until the 1st, Lena explained somberly. She was referring to her monthly allowance, which was deposited directly into her checking account. But judging by her door expression, you'd think she was waiting for food stamps and a welfare check to feed her starving children. I thought you said you didn't work, Mimi said, assuming that by money she meant a paycheck, and also noting that it wasn't the end of the month. It was the 12th. I don't, Lena said curtly, because the fact that she didn't have any professional goals and didn't aspire to go on to higher education was a sore spot for her. Time to change the subject. Want to come over and hang tonight? She untied the waist of her burgundy FUBU sweats and exhaled. "Sure," Mimi answered. "Great," Lena said, throwing on her fur-lined denim jacket over her matching FUBU hooded sweatshirt. "Spend the night if you want. I ain't got shit to do." "Okay," Mimi said brightly as they walked out. "Let me go over to my place first to get some stuff." Lena immediately put her arm up for an approaching cab. "Lena," Mimi protested, "my apartment is only 3 blocks away. I thought we were going there first." My apartment. Mimi couldn't believe she had a place in New York and a record deal. Every night she'd go to sleep hoping she wouldn't wake up to find it was all a dream. "I know, but it's cold," Lena complained. "And I'm full. I can't walk." Mimi couldn't help chuckling and scooted into the cab behind her. As they waited at a red light, Lena turned to her. "So you never told me you got a man back in Toledo?" Mimi rolled her eyes. "Bitch, please." They laughed. Chapter 12. Queen Bee. Vanessa de la Cruz was gazing into the mirror in her expertly lit bathroom, doing what she did best, admiring her own beauty. She brushed a glob of thick Bobby Brown lip gloss on her collagen-enhanced lips, blotted, shook out her tumble of tawny locks, and admired herself again. Beautiful, gorgeous, beyond, almost ready to go to heaven. She hadn't used any L'Oreal tonight, though the products cluttered her bathroom, a perk of her lucrative contract with the cosmetics company. When they had approached her, she was delighted. When it came to light that they wanted her to hawk anti-wrinkle cream, she wanted to tell them to fuck off. She didn't have any wrinkles. Well, they were only beginning to sprout. Since she was supposed to look her age in the ads, did that mean they weren't going to airbrush? She was 31 and annoyed that she couldn't downgrade to 28 because her adult life was a matter of public record, and some nosy reporter would surely call her on it. Oh, to be young again. In her business, she felt like an archaeological find. Vanessa had appeared on the cover of every major fashion magazine, all continents, by the time she was 20. At the peak of her fame, she had, predictably, dated a grungy 20-something actor and, even more predictably, been dumped by him a year later without explanation. A string of brief and tumultuous failed romances had followed, along with the obligatory rehab stay at promises that didn't take. By 26, she had fallen out of favor with the fickle fashion flock and, like most models, had no contingency plan whatsoever. Having drunk from the well of fame and privilege, it was difficult to fade away into anonymity. So she took the L'Oreal job. She had to keep her face out there. But she had her agent negotiate for added compensation for having her face associated with an anti-aging product. On the edge of the sunken bathtub sat Vanessa's best friend, Mustafa, a slightly effeminate, painfully thin native of Senegal who claimed to be a performance artist, though curiously no one, not even Vanessa, had ever seen him perform anything, anywhere, and he had no identifiable source of income. "Baby, is that the baby?" Mustafa inquired lazily, flipping through W. "Lupe's got it," she said, unconcerned, referring to one of her illegal immigrant nanny trio. Consuela was weekdays, Lupe was weeknights, and Homadi was weekends, holidays, and travel days. If Vanessa's husband, Alonzo, were here, he'd go running. He had extra sensitive ears when it came to the little one. He could hear that kid fart from 3 rooms away. It was bizarre. Yet when Vanessa would ask him to upgrade her wedding ring, he'd play deaf and dumb. Alonzo was the vice president of hookups at Triple Large Entertainment. That is what it actually said on his business card. Translation? He was the hapless brother of CEO Lamont Jackson. His responsibilities? Doing whatever Lamont said. His annual salary? very high 6 figures. Vanessa thought he was a failure. Alonzo wouldn't be accompanying them to heaven tonight. He was out of town on some sort of business. Whatever. Marriage didn't really suit Vanessa de la Cruz. By their 4th date, she'd discovered she was pregnant. They had done the deed on their first, even though Vanessa usually waited until she received an appropriately expensive gift before she invited a man to the paradise that was her pussy. But Alonzo, though not as high profile or rich as the men she'd been dating for a decade, was too sexy to be denied. Tall and ripped, he had short, wavy brown hair, warm chestnut skin, a movie star profile, and a husky voice that made every stupid thing that came out of his luscious lips sound arousing. They ran off to Vegas and were married in a $75 ceremony at the Silver Bell Chapel of Love without telling anyone. Except the press. It was so exciting. Vanessa decided to have the baby because, well, all the models were doing it. And she was on the cusp of 30. Motherhood would be her next act. She'd appeared on the cover of Fit Pregnancy, in a Gap maternity ad, and nude in her 7th month, in an L layout. The accompanying profile, only 1 page when Vanessa felt she deserved 2 at least, quoted her musing about the rigors of pregnancy. "I've gained 9.5 pounds, but the sacrifice is so worth it. The joy of impending motherhood. It's a girl and I can't wait to have another little me running around." And why she planned on naming the baby Vanessa. Why should men be able to do that and not women? Carolina Herrera has a junior. I want one too. Turned out, the amniocentesis was wrong. It was a boy. Motherhood was the one thing that suited her less than marriage. Pedro Miguel Antonio de la Cruz Jackson was a cranky baby, and Vanessa was used to sleeping in. The round-the-clock nanny rotation took care of that problem. But Pedro, who had olive skin, big hazel eyes, and a shiny mop of sandy brown curls just like Mommy, always smiled for the cameras, and wasn't that what counted? Mustafa followed Vanessa as she traipsed into her dressing room, which was designed to look like a chic boutique. She let her long satin robe fall and stood, au naturel, eyeing the racks of clothes and cubicles of neatly arranged accessories. Every public outing was an opportunity to preen, another fashion shoot. Ashamed of her body? There was no reason. Vanessa was svelte and long-limbed with curves in all the right places. She'd had enough reinforcement from photographers, bookers, and every man she'd ever dated to know that there were no words to adequately describe her physical perfection. Even after the baby. No lipo needed, sweetie. Vanessa's first order of business after returning from her honeymoon in Cap Juluca, an exclusive resort in Anguilla, had been to hire a contractor to turn the workout space in Alonzo's former bachelor pad, big and paid for by Lamont, into a closet for her constantly expanding wardrobe. Once married, Alonzo had expected Vanessa to cook and handle other such domestic duties like his mama had done when he was growing up. But when Alonzo had returned home one evening shortly after their lovey-dovey honeymoon, he'd learned that Vanessa de la Cruz didn't serve. She expected to be served. "I'm hungry," he'd said. "So am I," she'd responded, not looking up from her copy of Hola magazine. "What's for dinner?" He'd made the mistake of pressing. "I don't know," she'd said, peering at him over the top of the magazine with a look of utter confusion. "What?" When he suggested she cook something, she'd screamed like a banshee, "I'm pregnant!" What did they have in common, really? Alonzo thought their son was a blessing from God. Vanessa looked upon motherhood as a noose slowly tightening around her exquisite neck. Alonzo was a reformed bad boy who'd grown out of his hard partying ways. Vanessa continued to live the life of a rich, unencumbered, socially connected 22-year-old. Alonzo kept imploring her to quit abusing that shit for everyone's sake, but that shit was the only thing that kept her from confronting the grim reality that she was someone's wife and someone's mother, and therefore expected to act as such. They did have one thing in common: a love of rough sex. That, and the fact that they looked so damn good together, was enough to keep the marriage intact. For the time being. Dressed in skin-tight white Frankie B. jeans sans panties, stiletto boots, and a fur chubby over a sheer white camisole, Vanessa struck a pose and waited for Mustafa's usual assessment. "Perfect, baby," he cooed. She snorted a line of coke. Mustafa followed suit. Then they both donned their shades and were off without a word of farewell to Lupe or Pedro. Chapter 13. Somebody's Girl. "Take it off, Nessa!" Witchy shouted. It was 1 a.m., and heaven was fire hazard crowded. DJ Billy, a rail-thin Japanese girl with long, multicolored pseudo-dreads, was spinning. People didn't really dance at heaven. There was no actual dance floor. The chosen few who made it inside just sat in their seats and bounced rhythmically, waving their hands in the air or shouting out song lyrics. Sometimes, usually very late in the evening, an intoxicated girl would climb up on a table and gyrate clumsily. Tonight, Vanessa de la Cruz was that girl. With each off-balance shimmy, the straps of her silk and lace camisole slipped further down her sweaty shoulders. MC Grimy, TLE's 27-year-old star, arrived. Lamont had asked him to stop by after his session at a nearby recording studio so they could have a meeting about his still untitled 6th album. Grimy felt more comfortable in his Bronx neighborhood than in the midst of this A-list madness. He was anxious to get back to his regular habitat, which was sitting in his Escalade, lost in a fog of chocolate tie. After peeping the overly trendy crowd out front, 4 members of his posse, the Dirty Dozen, who were riding with him, decided they'd be better off blazing in the truck. A known celebrity, Grimy had no problem getting through. There were actual pearly gates outside the club, and a woman wearing angel wings who was sitting on a high stool with the godlike power to admit or deny entrance to all who approached. "Where's Monty at?" Grimy asked, taking a seat with Lamont's crew at their banquette. Intently watching Vanessa's performance, no one answered. A minimalist compared to his hip-hop colleagues, Grimy wore no diamonds, eschewed flashy labels, and kept his hair buzzed tight. Always dressed entirely in black as he was tonight, jeans, logoless hooded sweatshirt, and work boots. He appeared to be in a perpetual state of mourning. In a way, he was. He had 2 tattoos, a black teardrop under each eye. One was in honor of his late suicidal mother. The other for his brother, a hemophiliac who'd survived numerous hospital stays only to be stabbed on the street, where he bled to death within minutes. Grimy got his record deal a month later. Grimy had spent his formative years in and out of jail for small-time crack dealing. He told interviewers, when he actually showed up to do press and felt like answering their silly questions, that the time he spent lyrically battling other inmates in the joint had helped him sharpen his rhyming skills. "A lot of talented motherfuckers in there," he'd say. "Just fell short." A ruffian of the first order, albeit one with a 140 IQ, he regarded studio gangsters, including his label mate Floss, with more pity than contempt. "A lot of niggas in this industry, and I ain't naming no names, get caught up trying to be something they ain't just to sell records," Lamont's thug genius had told Rolling Stone. "I don't do that. I'm a rapper, not an actor. I never knew my father. My mother killed herself when I was 15. My brother got killed a few years later. My reality is gritty enough. I've done wrong in my life, selling drugs, because people told me that was all I could do right. I've been locked up in a real prison, so don't send me no video treatment where you got me rapping in a jail cell. There's nothing glamorous about that. I got a second chance. So don't take me back there, not even to pretend. I don't need to pretend. I don't need to romanticize shit. Everybody's worried about going platinum, being better, hotter, richer than the next man. But when you're number one, ain't nowhere to go but down. I don't sweat the charts, and I don't check sales figures. If you want to buy my shit, cool. If not, don't worry about me. I'm gonna be alright. Mustafa was pulling Vanessa down from her makeshift stage when Lamont returned and spotted his multi-platinum seller. He approached wearing a proud smile, arms spread wide, and bellowed, "My thug genius!" DJ Billy spotted Grimy and threw on Buckshots, the hit from his second album that included a chorus of nothing but gunshots. The bullet-popping intro startled a few of the older clubgoers not familiar with the record. Nate, Lamont's buddy and lawyer, gleefully noticed some of them almost dive for cover. "Where you been?" Darryl asked as Lamont slid down next to Grimy. "You missed Vanessa's little show. Thought we was gonna get a titty flash." It didn't surprise Lamont. His sister-in-law was a wild thing, and her attention-seeking stunts never stopped. Alonzo needed to kick her ass, and he made a mental note to tell Zoe that. At any rate, her titties were old news. He'd seen them poolside, peeking out of flimsy tops during runway shows, in European magazines, etc. He'd go over and make his disapproval known to her in a minute. Right now, he had a story to tell. "Titty flash," Lamont said, a devilish grin forming. "I got more than that in the bathroom." Nothing more specific needed to be said. Lamont was known to be an ardent fan of the blowjob. Terribly germ-phobic, he wouldn't have unprotected intercourse with a woman until he'd sent her to his own doctor for an HIV test. Blowjobs were a way to immediately satisfy his carnal cravings, with only a quick spot check of the mouth area to rule out any visible sores. Since his sexual predilection was well known on the party circuit, women who enjoyed giving such pleasure often approached him out of nowhere. Who knew there were so many? "Damn," Witchy said. "Who from?" They all immediately began scanning the room. "Her," Lamont said, nodding toward an attractive woman in her early 30s who was making her way through the crowd, with the pink top. Grimy's eyes canvassed the room. Whether performing or hanging with his boogie-down Bronx dogs, Grimy's ruggedly handsome face usually took on one of three expressions: rage, disinterest, or a temporary weed-induced calm. Unless performing, he spoke in a flat monotone, as though backing his words with any emotion was an arduous task he was not up to. But when he located the woman in question, his eyes flashed and he nearly shrieked. "That old white bitch?" "She was waiting outside the bathroom when I came out," Lamont said. The guys all huddled around to hear the details over the thump of the music. "I've met her before. Amy, I think her name is. She pushed me back in, locked the door. She just pulled my shit out, never said a word." "Did she swallow?" Witchy begged to know, worshipful of Lamont's brazenness and wondering why things like this never happened to him. "Yes," Lamont happily confirmed. "Yes, she did." "So," Grimy inquired hesitantly, "you fuck with white bitches?" "What is wrong with this nigga?" Lamont groaned, throwing his hands up in mock exasperation. "Grimy, you're a rap star. You never fucked a white bitch?" Grimy stared at him blankly. "Not even a dick suck?" Grimy shook his head. "Nah, I don't get down like that." "Grimy! Grimy!" Lamont moaned dramatically. You got to get out more, nigga. Try new things. A low chuckle rumbled around the table. Grimy, you're kidding me, right? Grimy shook his head. But you've been all over the world on tour, Lamont yelled, trying to understand how this could have happened. You've been to London, Germany, Japan. Grimy shrugged. Are you telling me, Lamont smirked, that you go to all these countries and do not sample their cuisine? Wherever I'm at, they find me the black chicks. Grimy explained of his posse's international system of rounding up girls for his pleasure. Lamont squinted at him. What are you, prejudiced? Grimy almost grinned. Feeling right at home as the center of attention, Lamont continued to milk this riff for the crew's amusement. I was with you in Japan, nigga, he pressed, lapsing into full-on Ebonics because his bit would sound funnier that way. Ain't no black bitches over there. Not unless they was on vacation. And those cute little Japanese honeys were hopping around you like you was a museum piece. All you had to do was sit there and let one of them hop on your dick. You didn't get none of that? Did you? Grimy wondered. Lamont gaped at him with widened eyes, pretending to take offense, and slipped back into urban sophisticate mode. I'm an international fucking playboy, money. Of course I got some. You get one with real long hair. It feels like silk. They brush it all over you. Their skin's all soft. I'm talking totally hairless, man. They're so tiny you can just flip them every which way. Lamont paused to add a visible shiver of excitement for effect. It's the shit. Everyone cracked up except Grimy, who turned up his nose, unimpressed. I don't like sushi. That made everyone howl, but it was Lamont's instant comeback that slayed them. How would you know, nigga? You ain't never tried it. The women are the actual food, Nate chimed in. Grimy's that nigga that goes to Japan and eats lunch and dinner at McDonald's every day. Grimy confirmed this conjecture with a nod and added, breakfast too. You've been around the world 3 times over, Lamont said, shaking his head. But you are one local motherfucker. Seriously, kid, you need to educate your palate in more ways than one. Grimy looked lost. Educate his what? He leaned back into the booth as a flamboyantly dressed man pranced by, as if the outfit itself were contagious. Lamont threw his arm around Grimy's shoulder and pulled him in closer. You want to know the best thing about all these white women in here? Lamont scanned the room and cackled at the punchline before he even delivered it. None of them want to marry us. A spontaneous burst of laughter rang out from the table. They might want Ivy League Nathaniel with his lawyer ass, but they don't want any hip-hop niggas like us, Lamont said, conveniently grouping himself, a college graduate who had been raised in a stable, 2-parent home, into the same demographic as Grimy, a fatherless child raised on welfare who'd received his high school equivalency in a juvenile lockdown facility. Lamont yoked Grimy around the neck, then released him. I mean, I could pick any one of these white girls in here and decide to make her my girlfriend. He snapped his stubby fingers and waved dismissively. Send her flowers, take her out, buy her expensive shit. Play the game. But if I really did love her and wanted to marry her, you think she would? She would if she was some broad who didn't have shit, because I might be a nigga, but... Lamont grinned and tapped his chest proudly. I'm a rich, entrepreneurial nigga. You feel me? Preach, Nate joked before going over to schmooze with some industry folks. He'd heard Monty talk this bullshit before. So had Witchy and Daryl, who were now trying to molest a girl who'd passed by the table wearing a metallic tube top. But Grimy cocked his head, all ears. I mean, Grimes, you're famous, but you're still a nigga from the absolute fucking gutter. Grimy took that as a compliment. You're letting these suburban kids know what it's like down there. You're letting them safely experience that. That's the beauty of Grimy. Grimy basked in the praise. But you probably couldn't even marry a minimum wage white bitch. Lamont howled with glee. Grimy didn't. Unless she really fucking hated her parents. True, Grimy mumbled. True. But these women in here, they're educated. They have their own careers, Lamont rambled. These women can meet and marry a Wall Street guy. They all want rich men, but a rich white guy is their first choice. But they want to fuck us for the thrill of it. They want to go to the dark side, Lamont said, wiggling his eyebrows, and have a story to tell. Or a story just to keep to themselves. He took a big gulp of water and held his fist out to Grimy. Who am I to deny them? Grimy distractedly pounded Lamont's fist with his own while his eyes wandered toward the woman in pink, sitting at her table, laughing. She was sitting with two other women and a gray-haired man. Who's that guy? Grimy asked. Lamont squinted in the table's direction and watched as the woman, possibly named Amy, kissed Gustave, his partner in Swirl, full on the mouth. Now he remembered where he knew her from. Gustave spotted Lamont and waved. Returning the wave, Lamont casually told Grimy, her husband. Grimy watched this exchange, then, eyes twinkling, asked Lamont, You know him? Sort of, Lamont said. Grimy ogled the couple, thinking, Lamont is the pimp of the century. So, Lamont said, nudging his cash cow in the ribs to pull his attention back to important matters. How's the album coming?
This ends side 1 of cassette 3. Please turn the cassette over and start side 2 at the same point.